Welcome back to FlatsClass University. Today's video is what are you putting on your bait caster in 2025? I'm going to tell you right now, it's just not about picking different styles of braids or different weight braids. Lots of times I'll opt for something completely different than braid. That's right. I've been throwing a lot of this. And why would I throw 100% fluorocarbon for inshore fishing? Well, let's go to the water and find out right now. All right, something you've probably noticed, and not only here on the channel, on the YouTube channel, but you've also seen it on the television episodes for season 19, and I'm using a lot more of this. I've been using a lot of fluorocarbon line, and I'll get the question, so why would I use fluorocarbon line moreover than what I normally would with braid? Why are you using it inshore? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, if you live in a pressured fishery, fluorocarbon line can be a huge benefit. If you live in a fishery that has very clean water, like I'm in the Homosassa Crystal River area, so our water is nearly gin clear. It sees a lot of angling pressure too. And a big portion of the year that I'm fishing artificials, well, that's drought season. Those are low rainfall periods. So the water remains clear and it's very shallow here. So to have the ability to use a fluorocarbon line is huge here. Then there's the fact that a lot of my fishing, especially early in the season, is all speckled trout. I love fishing speckled trout. We're using Paul Brown lures, we're using Mirrodines, we're using some of my favorite treble hook plugs. Well, they work so much better when you're using line that gives a little bit. This line gives some. So when I'm using stuff that makes my job easier, I get excited about it. Now, I thought I was gonna lose a lot of casting distance and a lot of feel when I went to fluorocarbon line. That is not true. This fluorocarbon line is a JDM product. It's high quality, so it's low stretch, high sensitivity. Plus the fact that I roll the line over my finger and I've got an exposed blank here. This is a one-piece aluminum reel, so I have a ton of feel. So are there limitations to fluorocarbon? Yes, there is. There's going to be periods where I'm fishing some cover that I would be better off with a rod with braid on it. But if I'm fishing open flats, I'm fishing potholes, I'd much rather fish with fluorocarbon. The other added advantage for me with fluorocarbon is the fact that I don't have to tie on 4 and 5 feet a leader with a piece of bite tippet. It saves a ton of time. I just use 14-pound fluorocarbon and then put about 1 foot of bite tippet on here. I might use maybe 30-pound if I think a snook's around, or if I'm fishing, you know, for just big trout and stuff like that, I might only have 20 on here. And I think the castability of fluorocarbon line is better. I don't nearly get the professional overruns that I would get with braid. So it's a lot easier on that note for sure. And then the fact that it's just, to me, it's a pleasure to have that little bit of forgiveness when the fish comes to the top of the surface, whether it be a snook or it be a trout, and they run up there and they do the violent head shakes. They can't get rid of the plug. There's just enough give and take that they can't get off. So I miss a lot fewer fish. And I'm gonna say the most fun about it is the fact that when I get out there, instead of me just sweeping like I do with braid and reeling tight, I get to crack them. I mean, I get to really like whack and set up on them. And I miss that. And I've got all that going for me now. Now, if you were to ask me what weights I prefer, I use a lot of the 12 and 14 if casting distance is going to be something that I want. But 14's probably the one I use the most, but I also use a lot of 17, especially if I'm going to use jigs. Something with a single hook and I need a little bit less stretch and I want more hook penetration, I will definitely go to 17. I think the 17 does a good job for me. And there are times when I will use 20 if I'm throwing up close to mangroves and things like that. I'll use 20 because if they run me around something, lots of times because the diameter of fluorocarbon is greater than braid, braid sometimes will bite into the wooden roots of a mangrove. But fluorocarbon, especially if you're using 20, it's thick enough, it'll go around and you can pull them right around that, no problem at all. There's been lots of times I've been able to finesse a fish that ran me into cover and get them out. But if you're looking for something different, you want an advantage of stealth, you want a more technical way to fish, think about picking up some of that Momoy Soflex fluorocarbon. It is built for inshore fishing. It does a really, really good job. I'm completely sold on it and I'm anxious to prove to you guys how valuable it is. We did a show where we caught a bunch of large cobia that were off the backs of rays, and I was using 17-pound, I believe, in that episode, and it was just amazing how easy it was for me to make accurate casts, get out there, never had one cobia shy off it, and we didn't lose any fish in that episode, which was probably the first time we've ever done an episode on cobia and never lost a fish. All right, we'll go back and wrap this up in the studio right now. Hopefully you learned something while we were out there on the water, but I want to drive home those 5 points on why castable 100% fluorocarbon can be a serious advantage to you, the inshore angler. All right, number one, of course, would be the stealth aspect. The fact that fish are tougher and tougher to catch. If you've ever faced those spooky redfish or you see those big trout laid up there and you've tried to throw braid over the top of them and work a lure back and all they do is run off, you'd be surprised how much success that you would have if you just tried fluorocarbon on your bait caster. You really would. That's probably the number one thing that you should take away from this video. Number two, it does sink faster. So in those situations where you're fishing these like drop-offs, these rollovers, and you're making casts in there and you're fishing with braid and you're using kind of a semi-slack line where you're just working a jig off the bottom and letting it fall, well, that braid hangs visibly awkwardly in the water because it doesn't sink. It wants to float up high and it just kind of cantilevers down with the weight of that lure. It's a nice even fall right quickly to the bottom, right where the fish are when you're using fluorocarbon line. 3, the forgiveness that this line gives you. It has a property that's similar to mono but doesn't stretch quite as much. The problem with monofilament lines lots of times is they have too much stretch and they dampen the feel. Not so much with this Japanese domestic product here from Momoy. It's very dense, it's very sensitive. So I've got all the feel, not as much as braid, but a lot of it I have. And I do have the benefit of a little bit of stretch, which helps me when that fish comes to the top and starts to head shake or makes an awkward move. There's that little bit of give that doesn't let that hook tear through the flesh. And when you're fishing with shallower depth type treble hooks that I use, or treble hooks where I've mashed the barbs down, that's important. That's what makes it work for me. That's why we keep those fish on and they don't roll off the hook. 4, line control. Believe it or not, because this is a little bit thicker than you would be using if you were using braid, for me, I don't get near as many backlashes, and it's so slick and so smooth. When I make those casts, it just comes right off the spool like butter. It is an amazing product to cast. I have become so reliant on it that I've been basically fishing this stuff almost exclusively. I've fished a couple of reels now with some micro braid on my salty hundos, but a lot of them right now have this Soflex fluorocarbon. And then lastly, it definitely simplifies your leader choice. Instead of having to tie on these long leaders to try to create a buffer between the braid and the lure, now I just run the fluorocarbon right up to the lure and maybe tie on a piece of bite tippet, maybe that long, 12, 15, 18 inches long max, of maybe some bite tippet that's a little heavier. But that's it. You can tie that with a double uni, you can tie it with a blood nut, no more complicated FGs, no more complicated Albertos, none of that. Just fluorocarbon almost straight to the lure. Hey, if you're finding value at FlatsClass University, please give us that thumbs up, smash that subscription button, and consider coming over to FlatsClassUniversity.com and learning with us over there. We go way deeper than what we do here at FlatsClass YouTube. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Have a great weekend.